What's up, everybody? Rubitwa2 here, and before we get into the video, right above me, there is my Twitch link, twitch.tv/Rubitwa2. If you want to come check me out, 11 p.m. to around 3 a.m., 3:30 a.m. EST. I play a bunch of games, come check it out. If not, it's whatever. So, I said I was done doing meta-analyses and on certain decks. This one really isn't about that. As you all know, when League of Explorers came out, the Blizzard introduced the Discover mechanic. And as a Yu-Gi-Oh player, I myself was very familiar with how this kind of mechanic works and how strong it can be. So the title of this video is going to be Discovers Mechanic, Discovers Competitive Future, and then the theory of pluses and minuses, or plussing and minusing in certain card games. Maybe they use that terminology. I know Yu-Gi-Oh definitely did. Something in Hearthstone that could be comparable to plussing and minusing is 1 for 1, 1 for 2, 2 for 1. It's not the same thing, though. And to make this video even... This actually be a rather long video. I have a lot to talk about, so I hope you guys stick through it. And for this video, I actually have like I have a chart on my screen, so I know what to talk about, so I don't go off the track. So this video is going to talk about why Discover is so good, and I think Discover is actually the best mechanic when Blizzard introduces another expansion, not another adventure, but another expansion altogether, with a bunch of new cards. Discover is going to take over the meta and possibly a bunch of other decks that we've seen before, like regular Control Warrior, a bunch of these decks, Mech Mage, Face Hunter. A lot of these decks might actually fall off in favor of these new Discover decks. So what cards got released in League of Explorers now that make Discover so good? So I have up here Jeweled Scarab. Now this card doesn't really see much of play in ladder play or competitive at all. It sees a lot of arena play. It's actually one of the best arena cards, I believe, as a 2-mana card. Because let's say you don't draft a bunch of 3-mana cards. If you draw this card, you have a legitimate curve for the next turn. You don't waste your turn 3. You play turn 2 Jeweled Scarab into turn 3, whatever you get. Discover cards for the class you're playing for. I believe I don't know if it was just for Dark Peddler, but I think the chances of you to get a class card, a class 3 drop from, let's say, Jeweled Scarab, is 400 times more likely than a regular 3 drop, which is why their class cards tend to be stronger. Jeweled Scarab is played a bit in some. I believe Priest might play it a bit. Any Reno decks might play one copy of it because you have something to play on turn 2. You can play something turn 3. In case you don't get the right curve. It's also just another card to fill out these Reno decks, because with Reno you need to have one copy of every card, and sometimes some decks just can't put that in, get cards to fill in these spaces. So I have cards like Jeweled Scarab here, and then there's also Dark Peddler, Discover a 1-cost card. Now why is this card so good? Because if you're basically every Warlock deck that isn't Handlock plays this card. It gives you a good turn 2 option. Warlock actually doesn't have a lot of good turn 2 options for their class cards. There are a bunch of neutral cards that Warlock plays that are really viable, and this card kind of replaces some of them. Let's see, in Zoo, so you have really good 1-drops. You have your Flame Imp, you have your Voidwalker. Dark Peddler gives you the instant 2/2 for 2, and you get this 1-drop that. And Warlock has some pretty good 1-drops, like Mortal Coil, Power Overwhelming, Soulfire, now that they nerfed it, for me as your mana card. Or if you're on turn 3, and you already played like your Haunted Creeper on turn 2, you can play Dark Peddler, and then your 1-drop you get Void card, you get Reliquary Seeker. If you're playing this token deck with Sea Giants to make it a 6/6, you can just save that. Overall, Dark Peddler is a really strong card. Now, why I think this mechanics would be really good is, so far we only have 4 class Discover cards. We have Dark Peddler for Warlocks, we have Raven Idol for Druids, we have Museum Curator for Priests, and then we have Ethereal Conjurer for Mage. Now, 3 of those see play in almost every deck. Museum Curators in Priest, like almost every Priest deck, even Dragon Priest plays it. Dark Peddler's in fucking almost every Warlock deck except Handlock, and then Museum Curator, Raven Idol is basically in every Druid deck that isn't like super aggro. So yeah. So we have Hunter, Paladin, Rogue, Shaman, and Warrior that still need Discover cards. And if we've seen Discover cards like Dark Peddler and all these other ones be really good in these other decks, what makes people think that they wouldn't be in, that Hunter wouldn't play, that Paladin wouldn't play, especially if they are they give you, or you discover cards that help your class do better. Maybe Hunter maybe it's a better Tomb Slayer. Tomb Slayer is not that great. Maybe this Beast Hunter Discover card gives you a Beast, lets you discover a Beast. Maybe it lets you discover a card that deals damage. Maybe the Paladin one lets you heal yourself. Maybe it lets you maybe it gives you like a card that that might change the stats of a creature, like a Keeper of Voldemort. Like, you have 3 choices you could choose between: Keeper of Voldemort, Outdoor Peacekeeper, Equality. Those might not be the only ones. Cards that change stats. Okay, so for Paladin, like, you can get the use of Sergeant, you can get Dark Iron Dwarf, you can get cards that maybe maybe there's a possibility you get Shrinkmeister for Paladin, because Paladin tends to deal with a lot of that, like changing stats or buffing their creatures. Maybe you get a Blessing of Kings off of it, Blessing of Might. Like, there are some bad cards in there as well. So yeah, Rogue could possibly get a weapon. It could choose between any weapon in the game. Like a mini Blade Shrine effect, it could get itself Arcanite Reaper, can get itself Death Spite, it can get itself Assassin's Blade, it can get itself maybe even the now they're collectible cards. So maybe you get bad cards like Cursed Axe or Stormforged Axe, which I made a video about that and how it can get better. But you can get the 2/2 Glaive Zuko, which isn't the best for Rogue, but maybe you can get something like that. Shaman could possibly give you a random Overload card. Everybody hates Overload for Shaman, but that's where the deck's going towards at the moment. So maybe you can get a Lightning Bolt, you can get a Feral Spirit, an Earth Elemental, because people don't tend to run Earth Elemental, but if they can get it without playing the card, without actually playing the card in their deck, it becomes a good card. Warrior can get like a card that deals damage to minions. You can get a Whirlwind, you can get you can get Revenge, you can get that 7-mana Epic. Just with that text in there, you have this huge versatility in the Discover mechanic that makes it really good. People get to choose. It's not RNG. It is RNG, but it's RNG that lets you have a choice. And when you have a choice on what you want to do, it becomes that much better. So, I discussed why this card's why the mechanics are really good in Hearthstone. Now, how does this mechanic? Why I think it's so good is because this mechanic, like Discover, is very similar in a bunch of other card games, like Magic, like Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, I've never played Vanguard, but maybe Vanguard has it as well. But this is like, I have a couple cards in here. So, how a card like Jeweled Scarab is, I compare. Since I recently quit Yu-Gi-Oh! Like a year ago, I don't know the meta now for Yu-Gi-Oh! But when I played, this was a very good card. So the theory of plussing and minusing, right? This is what a card like Jeweled Scarab does. It lets you plus. That means you have what I think the meta of Hearthstone is going to become if a bunch of Discover cards come into the next expansion is it's going to rely on increasing board state, having board advantage, having hand advantage. Hand advantage isn't something that's really important in the Hearthstone scene, because you have aggro dice, you have decks that like to take you out really fast. You have 0 cards in your hand. You have cards like Quickshot that make you need to not have any cards in your hand. So here's a card from Yu-Gi-Oh! Called Fire Formation Tenki. Now, if you guys don't know how Yu-Gi-Oh! Is played, it's a continuous spell card. So this means you play from your hand onto the field. It stays on the field. One second, I'm talking a lot. So when you play this card, it effectively stays on the field. All of your Beast Warrior type monsters gain 100 attack. Now, that's not that good of an effect. But when you play this card, and on activation, you add a Beast Warrior from your deck to your hand. Now, that's kind of similar to how the Discover effect works, except Discover is not coming out of your deck, so you can it doesn't decrease the odds. So why is this a plus? We consider in Yu-Gi-Oh! Was you play this card from your hand, so you minus a card from your hand. Let's say I had 5 cards in my hand. I play onto the field. Now I have an extra. You add 1 card onto what's on the field. And then its effect goes off and you add a card from your deck to your hand. Effectively, you lose no cards in your hand, but you have this 1 card in the field. So you effectively plussed. You didn't lose anything in your hand, but you put a card in the field. Now, Discover does effectively the same thing. You play this minion for 2 mana. Now, I guess the problem is there's that mana discrepancy, or the whole mana mechanic, where you only have the specific amount of mana you can use each turn. Yu-Gi-Oh! You can play a bunch of monsters each turn with their effects and whatnot. When you're playing Jeweled Scarab, and you take a card, like you pick one of 3 cards, and you add it to your hand. You now have this 1/1 that people need to, maybe you need to deal with. You can poke in for some damage, and you also get this 3-drop that you get to choose from. I want to keep on saying that's random, but it's not random, because it's 3 random cards, but you choose what you want it to do depending on how your game plan is. Now, when that's just having a very little amount of, and why Discover isn't as bad as taking a card from a deck, or and you just get it out of thin air, is it's a CCG. In Yu-Gi-Oh! If I played Fire Formation Tenki, this card right here on the screen, and I could magically get this Beast Warrior from like the sky, right? I could reach up and I could grab this Beast Warrior without taking anything out of my deck. I'm sure it would still be played. Now, why this card is in Hearthstone, I don't know how to really explain it. So you're playing 2 Control Warrior matchups, right? One person's playing Control Warrior, the other person's playing Control Warrior. But one Control Warrior is playing Jeweled Scarab. Maybe they're playing 2 copies of Jeweled Scarab, and the other Control Warrior is playing 2 copies of Acolyte. I'm just putting this example out there. Who's going to win the Control Warrior matchup? The one that plays the Acolyte or the one that plays Jeweled Scarab? Probably the one that plays Jeweled Scarab, because when you play Jeweled Scarab, you're effectively not taking anything out of your deck. And in a control matchup, fatigue is probably really important. In Yu-Gi-Oh! Games never actually go to the end of the game where people are drawing. In Yu-Gi-Oh! If you have 0 cards in your deck, you lose. In Hearthstone, it's not like that, but you're more likely in Hearthstone to go to the bottom of your deck and need to start taking that fatigue damage. The Jeweled Scarab Warrior might win like 80% of the time because control matches always go to the fatigue, and the Warrior that played the Acolyte has drawn probably 2 cards off of each Acolyte, and there are 4 cards deep in the fatigue game where the other Control Warrior isn't. Now, what happens when this expansion comes out and you get Discover cards that can discover other Discover cards? One thing I loved about Piloted Shredder, or Piloted Sky Golem, I mean, is you could get Piloted Shredder off of Piloted Sky Golem. So you effectively didn't lose anything, and you have these cards that keep reoccurring other creatures. So there's this card from Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, what happens when you have an entire deck full of Discover cards? This is a ritual card. It is basically how this deck worked, right? It was constant discover in Hearthstone terminology. When you would discard this card, you would get another one, and then you could discard that card, get another effect, and keep on working with your deck. You could remove 2 cards from your graveyard to add a card from your deck to your hand, and it could go through like half of its deck in one turn, which made it super strong. You could constantly change how your hand state was. You could change how board state was, and you could you always had board presence and hand advantage. Now, that's what a card, I don't have the card, but Tomb Spider. I love Tomb Spider. I love Raven Idol, because what happens is, or not necessarily Raven Idol, but what happens with Tomb Spider is, even though it's an overpriced 4-mana 3/3, is you play this guy, you can get another Tomb Spider from it. So, let's say you don't have any plays, you're in a top deck where you draw Tomb Spider, you play Tomb Spider, you get another Tomb Spider, you play that, and then you have another beast that you can play. Let's say you get a 2-mana like Direwolf Alpha and play in the middle. You effectively plus 2, and then you got this other Direwolf Alpha that you can play, and your opponent needs to deal with that board state, or they lose the game. That's 10 damage per turn, if they're also in a top deck situation. That's what I love about Discover, and that's what happens if Blizzard effectively makes more Discover cards. You play these Discover cards that can discover other Discover cards, and you're constantly plussing, not taking anything out of your deck, and it just goes like that. Now, what could possible future Discover cards be? Is you could something I don't have many examples in my head, but you could have stuff that a card that is a Discover card that discovers a card that deals damage. You could discover a card like Flame Lance. You could discover a card like Flame Strike. You could discover a card like Mortal Coil. And now you have those bad cards and the good cards, but it's like a 50-50. What am I going to get? And how's my strategy change when I play this Discover card? Do I take Mortal Coil and try to draw another card to get an answer, or do I take like a Consecration from my opponent, blows up the field later in the game, and I I can play it. A card I was thinking of was some form of dragon synergy where you play this card, right? It's like a 2-mana card that discovers, and let's say discover doesn't have to be pick 3 cards. Let's say the card just says to discover a Deathwing, but since this card costs 2 mana, you can't play the Deathwing. But it has a stipulation where the Deathwing gets discarded at the end of the turn. Now, why is this good? People might think it's pretty bad, but you're discovering this card. But a thing that Dragon decks always had a problem with was activating their Blackwing Corruptors, Blackwing Technicians, Twilight Guardians. Effectively, because Twilight Guardian is also a dragon, so you you want to play it, but you want to keep it because it's a dragon. So you add this Deathwing to your hand, and then you can play Blackwing Corruptor. You can play Twilight Guardian, and it gets discarded from your hand at the end of the turn. But you got all the dragon synergy. You could have a card like Gorilla Bot that you have a discover card that lets you discover a mech synergy card like Power Mace. You could get the rogue weapon. You can get the Clockwork Knight, the one that uses a friendly mech +1/+1. Cards that deal with mech synergies, not discovering a mech like Gorilla Bot does, but a card that discovers mech synergies. You can have a card like you can have multiple cards like Jeweled Scarab that lets you discover a 2-mana card, a 4-mana card, a 5-mana card, a 6-mana card. It can let you discover a random giant because we're adding every expansion tends to add a certain giant. So after the next expansion, we'll have 6, and then you can get one of the 3: Sea Giant, Clockwork Giant. How does your gameplay change around that? And let's say you're playing Handlock and you really need Molten Giants, but you might not play the card because you can't guarantee yourself getting Molten Giant every time. And Mountain Giant towards the end of the game isn't too great. So there's just so much versatility in the realm of Discover cards that lets you change your game plan, and it lets you play the real value game. You're plussing, you're getting this free card at the cost of 2 mana, but you're getting a card back. And you have this guy on the board, but your hand hasn't decreased in size at all. That's the strength of Discover. And I think that once the next expansion comes out, Discover's going to be a real threat. It might take up 10 out of 30 cards. It might be just so good. Blizzard introducing Inspire. Nobody loves it. Nobody likes it at all. It's a terrible mechanic. Everybody introduces. Blizzard introduces Discover. This is a real threat in the in how the game is played. People don't want to. It's just not something you want to play against because it's really it just gets all. Actually, I shouldn't say people don't want to play against it. It makes the game more strategic. It lets you play around certain. You can't play around certain cards, but what if your opponent got an Earthen Ring off of Jeweled Scarab and all that? So I thought I did a really good job on this video. This is my first video I actually did actual research on. It brings out my knowledge from Yu-Gi-Oh! 2U, and merges with Hearthstone. I might have did like a 3-minute rant towards the end there, but I think I did a really solid job. If you guys like the video, press that like button. If you want to have a discussion on Discover and how the effect might change the meta in the next expansion. Now, Blizzard hasn't announced if they're gonna what's coming out in the next expansion. Are they gonna introduce a new mechanic, or are they gonna put? What I think they're gonna do is they're gonna make more mechs. They're gonna make more dragons. They're gonna make more Inspire. They're gonna make more Discover, and the meta is gonna shape itself from there. New decks are gonna flourish, and all that. Decks might fall. So let me know you guys what you guys saw in the video, how I can improve. Check out twitch.tv/Rotwa2. Once this video goes out, I should be streaming at the time this video goes out, so come check it out. Have a good one, and Rotwa2 out. See you guys.